regular meeting of the Entertainment and Facilities Committee. This is the last Entertainment and Facilities Committee meeting of this legislative session. And at this time, I'd like to recognize all the hard work of city staff to make sure this committee runs smoothly. And they include Cheryl Benares of the CLA's office, Marie Brimsey of City Attorney's office, Michael Espinosa, City Clerk, Sergeant at Arms Morris, Duarte, Graciano, and Martinez. Thank you so much. And we do have comment cards on every item from 2 individuals, also filling out public comment cards. So we'll take those comments to start the meeting with. I am joined by my colleague, Joe Buscaino, and I know that Paul Krikorian was not able to be here today. So we do have quorum. And having said that, we will start with Wayne Spindler. And you have 2 minutes for the items and 1 minute for public comment. Let's start with the 2 minutes for your items.
Okay, defer to my colleague.
Yes, and again, a good job to the staff. Looking at number 1, a new lease. No more leases, just let people live. No more legal documents from the city attorney for office space and storage. Number 1, fuck number 1. Number 2, relative to the police department. What? Underprivileged youth and unclaimed bicycles? Oh, those are all the stolen bicycles, yes. So we want the kids to have stolen bicycles, which the police will steal from the homeless and give to the rich kids. I support this. I like this item. Thank you. Number 3, pavement color for making bike lanes. I've discussed this at detailed length. You need to stop paving the fucking pavement because the filming companies have to color over it on the digitized for this police station channel and all of the other cities we film. We film a lot of shit here in LA that's supposed to be New York and Chicago, and they don't color their bicycle lanes. So the studios have to cover the expense on their editing. No, and number 3, will you stop fucking around with this? You're going to ruin our filming industry. We don't like this. Number 4, the Friends of Historic Fire Station. First of all, a fire station doesn't have friends. It's a fucking fire station. It's not a person. It's a fucking thing. It's not even a corporation. No, on number 4, it's a lie. And finally, number 5. Yes, on number 5, Fox 6, 7, 8, 9. Yes, very good.
Public comment, 1 minute.
So this is the last meeting of the fiscal year. And as we know, Nuri Martinez chaired this committee. Give her a big hand. Yeah, she did a very, very good job. Nuri was excellent as chairing this meeting. Never threw me out. Joe never threw me out. And Mr. O'Farrell never threw me out. In fact, he corrected my spelling when I said fuck you. And he corrected the spelling. He's an excellent chairman. So I hope we return these 3 people back for the next fiscal year. And I also hope that a couple of councilmen, after they get indicted, yes, I hope that their chairs will be placed in 3 committee members. Every committee should have 3 members instead of 5, because we're going to be short a few councilmen, in my opinion, come this year, because Mr. Wesson can't keep it in his pants along with Mr. Price. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you. And let me just mention that taking a bath is always an option as well, because you smell. Armando Herman, 2 minutes for items and 1 minute for public comment. The clock is running.
Just time, O'Farrell. I got all
Okay,
the
let's stop
time
for a
in the
second.
world.
So we're being interrupted.
7,
We're being
8,
interrupted.
7 and 8. I object. I didn't sign up a card on 9. Gotcha. Item number 6. Who the fuck is this? Jose Weezar's item on what? sole source bias.
Can you hold this
along-
time? Mr. Spindler's still interrupting the meeting.
It's happening
If
with
you
my
can.
time.
Mr. Spindler's
Just
still
let him
interrupting for the
talk.
record.
I don't care if he speaks.
Here, Armando.
He can speak over me. He can speak all he fucking wants. It's public comment. If he wants to mimic me and talk behind my back, I don't give a rat's fucking ass. Don't interrupt me and
You need
let
to
the
stick with
fucking
the
clock
items.
run.
You need to stick with the items.
So back on topic, well, fuck item 6 for Jose Weezer, the fat bald fuck. And then I go to item 4, dealing with friends of historic fire stations. Like Mr. Spindler said, who the fuck are your friends when you come to a fire? It's a ladder that kicks you off. And then you go to item 3 regarding Los Angeles Department of Transportation report relative implementation of non-reflective green color. Leave the fucking streets alone. Fix the fucking infrastructure of your fucking broken down sidewalks and streets. Then Willits versus Los Angeles and Barden versus Sacramento don't have to fuck with you dumb, stupid schmucks. Then I go to item number 1, final item, and stay on topic, rookie. Stay on topic. I'm trying. All right, so the bitch tells me to stay on topic. So it reads like this. Municipal Facilities fucking Committee's report for fucking relative renegotiating and fucking exclusions of new lease at 3930 fucking Whiteside Street for El Pueblo's fucked up Los Angeles Historical Monument. We all oppose because unless you lower their lease and give them a lease for another 25 years at the same low rate, I'm in favor. I object, I oppose, and I reflect. Give it to them, 25 years and the lowest lease so they can keep funding us with jobs.
1 minute for public comment, General.
So now, as you heard, I attended LAUSD school board meeting this morning, and I was told, sir, you cannot bring your PSD dog into the facilities because under penal code, we're objecting you from this meeting. And I said, all right, you want nigga cop, stupid school policeman, you don't know shit. I'm going to file at this point against the city of Los Angeles because you represent LAUSD. I'm going to say under DOJ, ADA, I've been discriminated under Title II because I cannot be serviced with my service dog. And the stupid fucking schmuck says to me, sir, you got to have a tag on your dog. Well, you know what? The only tag I'm going to put on my dog is a tag that's on my foot, a 6.5 up your ass. Get off my back. Stop discriminating. Let people with individual disabilities participate in public fucking meetings, and that's all meetings with all agendas and all items, and stop discriminating, L.A. Damn.
And that concludes our public comment. For anyone who's never been to a city council committee hearing or a city council meeting, that is our First Amendment rights in action. And the same individuals testify at every single meeting they can and exhibit the same type of lunacy every single time, and they're entitled to do that. So anyone who is offended by the language, let me just apologize on their behalf because they don't have the character to do so themselves. So please consider that an apology on their behalf. Having said that, what I'd like to do, Mr. Buscaino, is take items 4 through 9 on consent.
So moved.
Thank you, sir. Which brings us to item number 1. Mr. Espinosa, please read the item.
Item number 1 is a report from the Municipal Facilities Committee relative to a new lease at 3930 Whiteside Street for the El Pueblo de Los Angeles Historical Monument used for office space and storage.
Thank you. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Albert Griego, Office of the CAO, representing the Municipal Facilities Committee. On May 25th, 2017, the MFC approved GSD's report, and adoption of the report recommendations would authorize GSD to execute a new lease for office space located at 3930 Whiteside Street for El Pueblo. And as a result of this recommendation, there would be no additional impact on the general fund. And General Services Department is here to provide an update on this item.
Good afternoon. John Shepard, General Services Department. In fact, the lease price has gone down at this facility that El Pueblo Historic Monument leases. It's a 12,250 square foot warehouse at 3930 Whiteside, and the City Terrace area with specific terms. GSD is here today to make a change or correction of those terms for the better. In fact, the negotiated price was 85 cents a foot. We renegotiated since this report was made down to 81 cents per foot, which is the current rate. So we're right back where we started. What that'll do is change the rate section in your, or line in your report. The monthly rate will now be $9,922.50 instead of $10,412. And the yearly rate will be $119,070 instead of $124,950 for the year. Those changes will be reflected in the council report.
Terrific. So we have a technical amendment that we are making
Yes.
to this item. And unless we have any further dialogue, I think we're good with moving that technical amendment forward without objection.
Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you, gentlemen. And we will go next to item number 2.
Item number 2 is the motion from council members Wesson, Martinez, Buscaino, and Price relative to establishing a pilot program to refurbish, recycle, redistribute for use by underprivileged use surplus unclaimed bicycles held by the LAPD, which are slated for auction or destruction.
Terrific. Thank you and welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Troy Lee. I represent the Department of General Services. We read the motion and aren't sure that this falls within our purview. We are responsible for the disposition of city-owned property, but we are surely able and willing to lend our expertise and experiences with R-Cycle to work with council, city attorney, LAPD to see what can be done to get this off the floor.
Terrific. At this time, I'd like to hand this off to my colleague, Joe Buscaino, for the amending recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have some further direction. I do want to take this moment to thank you for hearing this in committee and also recognize Council President Wesson and Councilwoman Martinez, who I was able to co-author this motion before us today. They turned to my office to see if we were interested in signing on and partnering of a first-of-its-kind program that would give new life to stolen or lost bikes that have been held by the LAPD for more than 60 days by donating them to our youth in our community. And one, coincidentally for us in CD15, one of my field deputies, John Jones, is a co-founder of a nonprofit organization called Eastside Riders that enables youth in Watts to learn new skills, be active, and become more connected to their peers and neighbors through bike riding. So I feel that this pilot program would be ideal for CD15 and would allow us to take our existing efforts in the Watts community to the next level. We held a Ciclavia in Watts last summer. We're holding the next Ciclavia in Wilmington, San Pedro in August, and it's a great fit for us. Once we have a successful season with the bike surplus program, I'm sure we'll turn to other districts in the city and go beyond CD15. But after meeting with LAPD and Department of General Services and the CLA's office, City Attorney's Office, I do have some further instruction that they would recommend. But before I do, I want to take a moment to thank everybody who were instrumental in moving this pilot program forward. We hope that this model will serve as a template for other innovative projects. I'd like to thank Council President Wesson's office, Justin Wesson in particular, Ms. Martinez's office, Maria Brimsey from the City Attorney's Office, Cheryl Barneras from the CLA's office, Drew Tolliff and Melody McCormick from GSD, Commander Palazzolo, Sandra Russell, and their team with LAPD, and John Jones, who, if I may ask John Jones to come forward, if I can, Mr. Chair. If John, can you just come forward and be recognized? And I know you're off to Detroit tomorrow with the work that you're doing in our communities and the bike sharing program. Speak to that, and then why the Eastside Bike Riders, what they do today, and where do you plan on going and taking on with this motion before us?
So thank you guys for having me here today. The Eastside Riders Bike Club is a community bike club started in 2008. In the Watts community, we've seen a need in our community to have kids, adults, and community come together via the bike. We use the bikes as a vehicle to bring people together, and then we do other events outside of the bikes. This bike program is something that was kind of brought to us through the Sheriff's Department. They have the BEAR program, and what we wanted to try to do is do the same thing in the city with the BEAST program, the Bicycle Education and Safety Training. We take kids 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, take a bike apart, put it back together with these kids learning these skills, buy new pieces, teach them safety, and then take them on a ride through the street so they can understand how to ride bikes throughout the street. So this is something that we would like to do starting in Watts, which we're already doing for the past almost 10 years, and then bring it throughout the city of LA.
Thank you, JJ. Mr. Chairman, he was not prepared to speak, but he killed it.
Yeah.
He did really well.
Yeah.
Really appreciate that. So with that, if I may, Mr. Chair, make a recommendation to direct the LAPD with the assistance of City Attorney and the CLA to negotiate the necessary documents to establish a pilot program with Eastside Riders, a nonprofit, and or any other future identified nonprofits to redistribute surplus unclaimed bikes held by the police department more than 60 days to youth in disadvantaged communities, and report to council with the necessary documents within 30 days. And second, request the city attorney's office to prepare and present an ordinance, if needed, to establish the pilot program in accordance with the LA Admin Code, Section 52.55, and we have a copy of these instructions that will be provided to the clerk's office. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You bet. There is no objection, so that shall be the order. And I thank you for your leadership on this wonderful initiative. It's terrific. And congratulations, Eastside Riders, for all your work for almost a decade now.
Yes, thank you.
It's making a huge difference. What a great model for the rest of the city. Thank you. Congratulations. So that shall be the order. And just for the record, this meeting has been continually interrupted by Armando Herman and Wayne Spindler. Since the very beginning, they're making sounds and visually moving around, waving their arms, making pig sounds and goat sounds. And that brings us to item 3.
Item number 3.
Okay, another interruption. One more, and you're out of here. Maybe you could learn a thing or two from your dog who has more manners than you do. So that's item 3.
Item number 3 is a report from the Los Angeles Department of Transportation relative to the implementation of non-reflective green color as a standard pavement color for marking bicycle lanes, and this one's also referred to the Transportation and Public Works and Gang Reduction Committees.
Good afternoon. My name is Bridget Smith. I'm the Executive Officer and Chief of Staff for LADOT. We're excited to be here with some good news.
Really, finally.
Yes.
We
Let's
found
just
the
take a
coding.
pause.
We like it.
I think we've got good news today. So I'm going to turn it over to Tim Fremo, who's going to walk you through a report back on this item.
Good afternoon, Tim Fremo, LADOT. We're here to report back on the collaborative process we've been engaging with representatives of the film industry in order to determine a mutually acceptable shade of green and material that we would like to have in our toolbox for the use within bike lanes. It's a tool that has been authorized at the federal level and has been regulated at the federal level. There are constraints in terms of using it and the type of color that can be used. That being said, we recognize that the previous uses, which had a fairly bright green, was problematic for the film industry in terms of filming. So we've been working closely with them in order to test and fine-tune and ultimately come up with a shade that is mutually acceptable to both parties. So we have implemented a test area in Boyle Heights on First Street, which is kind of our laboratory where we've tried a few different materials and shades over the course of the last couple of years, essentially. And several months ago, we went out there and met with representatives of the industry, and there was consensus as far as one of the particular materials, and which represents essentially, as far as we can go within the allowable spectrum, that is a little bit darker, significantly darker than what we had previously been using. There is another material which we also tested, which is meant to be a representation of the same color, but because it's a different material and a different vendor, it looked a little different in the application. And we understand that there's still some concerns with that particular application, so we are committed to continuing to explore how we can potentially include that material, but we're not quite there yet. So for the other material, the one that we're planning to use is a manufacturer that calls it Endura Blend. It's the same material used on the Broadway streetscape project downtown through the theater district, except that it's green, essentially. And we have also, prior to this, the earlier part of this process was to develop a protocol for where we are looking to implement these in a notification process and a collaboration process, depending on where the streets fall within the filming hot spots, shall we say. So as part of that effort, we cross-checked our corridors of interest, which are primarily high injury network as well as either existing or planned bicycle facilities, with those that were designated as high filming locations. And we came up with a map. And I'm actually going to give you a copy of the updated map because there was mistakenly 2 copies of one of the 2 pages attached to the report. So
Okay. Thank you.
pass 2 copies of that. And essentially, so for those particular streets, we would have a much more intensive sort of collaborative effort with the film industry on a case-by-case basis for each project prior to pursuing or implementing green on those particular streets, knowing that they're of concerns to all of us. For other corridors that are not high filming or that are high filming, but there are a handful of them on this map that were already screened by those representatives from the film industry and have been indicated as not of concern to them, even though they are labeled as high filming. It would be purely a notification process, but with ample notice. So essentially you end up with 2 buckets. One is streets that are not as much of concern to the film industry where we would just notify versus streets that are of concern but we're interested in using green where we would have a more collaborative process. As an example, Spring and Main Streets, we're looking at essentially taking those existing bike lanes and making them into protected bike lanes. And due to them being very prominently used in historical pieces, from the film industry's perspective, we've agreed to not use green at all on those particular corridors. As another example, we're looking at a couple of the Great Streets projects, which are parking protected bike lanes where the green is really an important tool because you have sort of a non-typical mixing of cars and bikes behind a parking lane where it's really important to have that extra level. For those, they're not, Venice was designated as not being problematic in terms of from the film industry's perspective, and Van Nuys is not a high filming corridor. But we, since we have not yet implemented those, but we're planning to in the next few months, we're going to be providing ample notification to the film industry on the timeline.
And to your knowledge, this doesn't mean that just because you're implementing green bike lanes that are acceptable to the industry doesn't mean that where they're placed in Van Nuys or otherwise, those streets can no longer, it doesn't prohibit, well, nothing prohibits, but it doesn't discourage the use of filming on those streets necessarily, because the color is commensurate with what's acceptable
Right.
filming purposes.
So just to chime in here, I think there's a couple important points. That's one of them is that this color isn't as problematic from what we're hearing. And so it's also a new material that we haven't used in this way again. So this will continue to be a living laboratory as we move forward. And if we hear of new issues that come up with it, we're happy to go through more vetting of different options. As Tim mentioned, there's another material that we're looking at. How can we develop it and work with the manufacturers to make it work for us? But at least we have a shade now that sounds like it works. The other thing I want to point out on the maps is that that is not a representation of all the projects we have planned to do. It is merely taking what's in the mobility plan along with existing routes and showing all of the streets the city has designated as places where there should be a lot of bicycling happening that also overlap with a lot of filming and our high injury network where people are getting killed and severely injured. So it's a special subset that's detailed in the report, but I just want to call attention to it because you may see a few streets on there that you think, why would we do any bike lanes green here? It's not meant to be a map of everywhere we plan to do green.
Okay. And I think we've always said that there have to be trade-offs, right? Because we can't, on the one hand, encourage the return to what I think is the home of the entertainment industry while also putting infrastructure on the ground that makes it impossible for them to film here when we want them to film here. So there are going to have to be trade-offs, and I think both sides know this. And I think that's part of the successful dialogue that you've had to land on this shade of green. All right, anything else? All right, some questions that I have in terms of how many green bike lanes are planned for 17, 18? Is that fully fleshed out in terms of the streets and the number for the plan?
We have, at this point, not identified any particular segments, but that doesn't mean that we might between now and the end of 18. So the upcoming projects that we are aware of are Van Nuys and Venice, the two great street segments where we installed parking protected bicycle lanes, and we would like to retrofit those with green. And the other project is the My Figueroa project, which had already previously been identified as having green as part of the protected bike lane design.
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about, there's a moratorium on high filming streets, and it's a 3-year situation?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So just, there's a couple of points that were of concern to the film industry. One was that once we chose a color, that we would have the ability to go out and paint green all over town really quickly. So the moratorium was really meant to assuage a lot of those fears. There's a list of high filming streets. I think the moratorium represents 2/3 to 3/4 of that list of streets that we are committing we will not be making green in any shape or form in the near future. And if we feel like that needs to change, we'll work together to change that, or if streets need to be added on. The other aspect of it is that when we paint the lane green, we're not going to be doing what sometimes is called like a carpet effect, where the entire lane is green. We're going to use it judiciously. So even on Van Nuys or Venice, you won't see those entire lanes go green, as some cities have done. What we've agreed to, and I think it's detailed in that letter as well, is that we will do it as judiciously as possible, just where we feel we absolutely need it.
And it's expensive.
It's expensive.
So that's also a cost savings. Yes. Yeah. And that 3-year moratorium, that's not arbitrary. That's a 3-year moratorium.
Yes.
Okay.
When's that sunset?
3 years from the date of the letter. I think it was November
when that
that
letter
we
came
sent the letter.
Okay. Any special equipment that needs to be purchased? Any, as far as from DOT's perspective? In other words, are there additional costs, since this is going to be a citywide initiative?
Well, we're still, as mentioned, we're still looking at the different types of materials. We like to have the option to have some work done in-house and some work done by contract, and we actually use different materials and application methods in those different scenarios. So right now, we've agreed on one material, which will meet one of those needs, but we're still going to be working on, and we are actively engaged with the manufacturers, and they're happy to work with us as a big city. We're fortunate to have that kind of pull with them. And so I'm confident we'll be able to find something that will work. Now, especially with knowing the shade, the issue with the second material was more about the friction component causing a sparkle effect, which I think is something that we can find alternatives for.
Okay, and you feel that with landing on this process, that we're fully budgeted for what you need to do in fiscal 17-18?
We're never fully budgeted for what we need to do.
Well, as far as what we're talking about here.
Right. We will
Because
be.
where I'm going is.
Yes. Is this going to be significantly more expensive? And that,
in the coming years.
Right. And that's something that we will be. This will be a test, so to speak, of this material for, in addition to the cost aspect of it, how much it ends up coming in as a bid item. We can't predict until we do bid that out, but we also we'll be keeping an eye on the durability of it, because this material hasn't been used by the city of Los Angeles in this way. We've used it for Broadway, where people are having tables and chairs, but this will be a place where cars will be driving over it, et cetera. So the film industry is well aware that, this is a test of this material, and if we find that there are significant costs or other factors that make it difficult to use, we'll definitely be looking for alternates.
So, okay, great.
But we can't predict it as of yet.
Sure, you kind of see as you go.
Yeah.
So tell me about this working group. Will you continue to meet? Is it formalized? Is it informal? Are you going to meet on a regular basis? I mean, you met and had this dialogue to get to this point.
Right.
After we expressed some frustration a couple of months back, and it's wonderful that we have this solution at hand. But as you just said, other issues are going to come up as it's implemented.
Yeah. What we've been doing is really calling the meetings as we need them. So, for example, the Spring and Main project has its own set of meetings with the same folks that are focused on that project, and we will be doing that probably on the MyFig project and some others as well. And then as there are unresolved issues, if there's any that come out of today's meeting or others that come up in the future, which I don't know what they will be, but there may be some, we'll call together meetings as we need them. So it's not like we meet on the third Tuesday of every month, but we had met monthly for a good period of time. It just, we've been fortunate and the participation's been really high from the film industry, and they're really super great partners willing to come in and work with us when we need them.
I'm glad to hear that, and I encourage that open line of communication, because the moment it stops, I'm definitely going to hear from the entertainment industry, and then I'll have to push it along again. So you don't need a middleman when you already have the relationship. But I'm happy to be engaged at any point that I need to be.
We appreciate it.
Or any of us, probably, for
Yeah.
that matter. I can't speak for everyone else, but terrific. Mr. Buscaino?
Thank you. I know
comments?
this has been an
Sure.
issue for a while here, and
Yeah.
happy to find that right shade of green. So thanks for your hard work, and happy to see you working hand in hand with our brothers and sisters at Teamsters. See Mr. Duffy here. Quick question, and maybe just a technical question on, I see the blue lanes, very high filming on the map that you've just provided of high injury network. These are existing bike lanes, correct?
Right.
Do these, are they to turn to green lanes in the future or not?
I think that's something we would determine on a case-by-case basis. There are no immediate plans other than the 3 projects I mentioned to you that for doing it. And
That's my question. Thank you so much.
You bet. All right. Thank you so much. And we have some comments, public comments on item number 3. We're going to start with Ileana Morton-Kichaven, followed by Sarah Walsh, followed by Lindsay Nolan. Hi, Ileana.
Good afternoon, Councilman, and thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. I do want to commend the DOT and all of the city staff in working so closely with the filming community. But I must also confess that it's confusing to SAG-AFTRA why for the past 5 years hasn't there been more time spent on other viable solutions other than green paint. Also, it's a very, very expensive project, as you've mentioned, so it's a little confusing to us, especially when there's no conclusive data proving that green paint really is the magic bullet to solve this. As obviously SAG-AFTRA believes in the safety and well-being of all citizens, but we do believe in a thriving entertainment workforce. We think it's important to keep people employed and contribute to the economy. So our preference would be really to only have white paint. That's SAG-AFTRA's stance, and not have any kind of obstacles. Why give filmmakers any kind of reason to choose elsewhere? However, I do want to acknowledge, in deference to the DOT and my colleagues, that they did come up with this color of mutual agreement. So therefore, we would not be opposed to moving forward with this, with the caveat that the DOT would work very, very closely, continue to work closely with the film industry on mutually agreed upon implementation that would be very detailed, and a mechanism to revisit streets in the future should the needs of filming change. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sarah Walsh, followed by Lindsay Nolan.
Thank you, Councilman. My name is Sarah Walsh, and I'm here today on behalf of the MPAA. As you are aware, the film community has been working with the Department of Transportation to find a workable shade of green paint for the city's bike facilities. The paint color currently used by DOT is bright and reflective, a condition that is exacerbated under the lighting found on almost all film sets, making filming extremely difficult. While we would prefer the white paint, we have arrived at a shade of green and a specific type of application process that we feel is workable, and which DOT agrees will not be applied in a carpet-like fashion, but instead will be used only in conflict zones. DOT is also committed to not use green paint on Spring and Main downtown, which is extremely important given the historic nature of those streets. There will need to be ongoing discussions regarding street segments the film community has identified as highly filmed and which fall on DOT's high injury network. And these are areas where we believe green paint would be problematic for filming, and we believe a formal process should be established for addressing those conflicts.
Thank you, Sarah. Lindsay Nolan is here, followed by Elizabeth Hawley.
Hello.
Welcome.
My name is Lindsay Nolan, and I'm the Policy and Outreach Coordinator at LA County Bike Coalition, as well as the chair of the Policy and Advocacy Committee at the Vision Zero Alliance. We're very concerned with the idea that the film industry is influencing the ability of public agencies such as LADOT to do its job in protecting the safety and well-being of residents across the city. While we understand that green bike lanes can present inconveniences to filming, we reject the idea that the film industry can prioritize the livelihood of folks in that industry over the safety of workers in all industry that rely on their bike to get to work. We're very concerned that catering to the preferences of one industry will set a dangerous precedent for derailing all types of street improvements and engineering projects that DOT continues to propose and roll out in the interest of saving lives and meeting the goals of Vision Zero. First, it's paint shade, and then what else? The film industry should not be designing our streets, DOT should.
Thank you. Thank you. And Elizabeth Hawley.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Elizabeth Hawley with VICA, the Valley Industry and Commerce Association, representing the business community in the San Fernando Valley. VICA thanks the Department of Transportation for their work with the film industry to find a more appropriate shade of green, and especially for coming to VICA's Entertainment Committee a couple of weeks ago. The current paint color and reflectiveness interferes significantly with filming, adding costs and discouraging an industry which is economically critical for the valley. So the DAT has agreed to a specific shade and application process which the film industry finds workable. VICA encourages the DOT to continue their conversation with the industry on street segments which are both highly filmed and also identified by the DOT as high injury zones. We support further clarity on this process. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. All right. There are no other comment cards on this item, so that concludes this item. And so what I'd like to do is recommend the following, that we approve the LADOT recommendation to instruct LADOT to report back in 1 year with an update on the performance of the newer shade of green color pavement marking materials, and to continue working together with the film industry representatives. It's been a very, very functional working group, and we have to, again, like I mentioned, there are going to be trade-offs, right? We value multi-modes of transportation, but we also value our signature industry. So this is an example of kind of landing on a compromise and forming a relationship moving forward that we can figure these things out as new needs come up that we have to address. So thank you so much, and without objection, that shall be the order. Thank you so much, and that concludes the meeting. Thank you. Okay, sounds good. All right.